Welcome, deep divers. Take a moment right now and just think about how many advertisements you've probably seen just in the last hour or so. Your social media feed, for sure.
Mm.
That billboard maybe you passed driving in, the emails piling up in your inbox, right? Even the way choices are presented in the grocery store aisle, it's kind of endless, isn't it? Have you ever found yourself making an impulsive purchase and then later you're like, wait, why did I buy that? I didn't even need it. Or maybe you feel this, I don't know, deep loyalty to certain brands. They just feel right, you know? Almost like they're part of who you are. Okay, let's unpack this a bit. Today, we're diving deep into this really fascinating, often kind of hidden world of how advertising taps into, well, human psychology. It's so much more than just, flashy images or catchy songs. It's really about understanding the tricky workings of our minds, those subtle cues and triggers that guide our decisions, sometimes without us even consciously realizing it. It's a masterclass in human behavior, really.
That's absolutely right. And our mission today is to try and uncover some of those profound psychological underpinnings of advertising. We're going to explore the subtle mental shortcuts our brains take just to process all this information, the deliberate persuasive strategies marketers use to influence us, how brands kind of weave themselves into our very identities, and also, critically, the ethical tightrope they walk when they're wielding these incredibly powerful tools. We've uh, pulled together a stack of insightful articles and some really cutting-edge research that truly illuminate this complex landscape. It gives us a pretty comprehensive view of how advertising profoundly interacts with our minds, like every single day. And
And our goal for you, our listener, is to give you a shortcut, basically, to being truly well-informed. By the end of this deep dive, you'll be equipped with some surprising facts, hopefully some practical insights, so you can better understand the powerful forces shaping your own consumer decisions. You'll probably never look at an ad or even just a product on a shelf quite the same way again. It's really about empowering you, making you a more discerning, more aware consumer in this world that's just saturated with commercial messages.
Mhm. So, okay, to start, let's just establish a baseline. We talk about advertising all the time, but what exactly are we, defining it as? What's its core purpose in this modern world?
Right. So at its heart, advertising is formally defined as any paid, non-personal form of presentation and promotion of ideas, products, or services by an identifiable sponsor. And let's maybe break that down for a sec because each part is pretty crucial. First, it's paid right. So space or time for the ad has to be purchased. That differentiates it from, say, a news story or public relations.
Okay, got it. Paid
Yeah.
placement. Second, it's non-personal. It's not a direct one-on-one sales pitch from a person. It's mass communication aimed at many people at once through various media, TV, radio, print, digital platforms, you name it.
Makes sense. Broad reach.
And third, there's an identifiable sponsor. You always know, or you should know, who's behind the message, whether it's a specific company, an organization, maybe even an individual. Ultimately, though, marketing experts stress that the fundamental goal is really twofold: make customers loyal and persuade audiences to believe or do something. That could be buying a product, obviously, but also adopting a new idea or even just shifting a perception about a brand or a cause. It's really about influencing behavior on a pretty broad scale.
Right. When you put it like that, yeah, it makes total sense. And it's almost impossible to imagine our lives without advertising now, isn't it? I mean, the sheer volume is just staggering. I read somewhere recently that a typical customer, you, me, whoever, is exposed to something like 5,000 or more brand messages every single day.
5,000.
Yeah.
It's almost unbelievable.
5,000. Think about that. From the moment you wake up, check your phone, your commute, browsing online, watching TV. It's just constant. So, yeah, a message really needs to cut through an incredible amount of noise just to even register, let alone, persuade you to actually open your wallet.
Yeah.
But this brings us to a really crucial point. Why is psychology so absolutely vital to making a message stand out in that ocean of information? Why isn't it just about having the best product or the lowest price? Surely if something is like objectively superior, that's enough, right? Why complicate it with, the human mind?
Well, it goes much, much deeper than just product features or price. Because frankly, we humans, we aren't purely rational economic machines. Not even close, really. Psychology helps marketers understand the complex, often subconscious reasons behind our choices. Researchers in consumer behavior, they aim to anticipate what we want, sometimes even before we realize it ourselves.
Wow, like mind reading almost.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, knowing someone well enough to hand them their favorite coffee just as they walk through the door without them even asking. Marketers are trying to get that level of predictive power. Because human decision-making, It's rarely a purely logical calculation. We're driven by emotions, instincts, mental shortcuts, far more than we often care to admit.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting and maybe a little humbling about our own, rationality. Research consistently shows that emotional responses to ads have a far greater influence on our intention to buy something than the actual factual content itself. We're talking sometimes by a ratio of 3 to 1 for TV commercials, even 2 to 1 for print ads.
Mm-hmm.
Huge difference.
Think about that statistic for a moment. We like to believe we're rational beings, right? Weighing pros and cons, reading the specs, but those underlying emotions, that gut feeling, it often leads the way, even when we don't consciously recognize it. It's a powerful insight into how our brains actually work, not just how we think they work. Exactly. It's precisely why a brand might focus on making you feel something like joy or security or a sense of belonging, rather than just listing features and benefits. By deeply understanding these mental shortcuts, these emotional triggers, marketers can align their strategies with how consumers actually think and behave, not just what they might say in a survey or what they think they should do. This understanding is absolutely key for cutting through that daily noise we were just talking about. It helps boost conversions, getting people to take the desired action like a purchase or a sign-up. It builds lasting brand loyalty that goes way beyond just a good price point, and it drives these deeper emotional connections with our audience. It's really about designing campaigns that resonate profoundly and make the choice to buy feel almost inevitable. Not through force, but through deep psychological resonance.
It's so clear that our brains are just wired for efficiency, right? To navigate the sheer volume of stuff we encounter every day, they're constantly sifting, making speedy decisions, using these mental shortcuts or heuristics, as psychologists call them. They're incredibly useful, sure. They help us avoid getting stuck in, analysis paralysis in this complex world. But they also have these predictable patterns that marketers have, they've learned to understand and, frankly, leverage.
Precisely. While these shortcuts are undeniably handy for getting through the day, they can also lead to predictable mistakes or, biases, especially when we're evaluating products or offers. Recognizing and applying these biases allows marketers to align their strategies with how we actually think and behave, rather than just what we say we do. It's about anticipating those very human tendencies. So let's explore some of the most impactful ones marketers leverage to sort of shape our decisions.
Okay, first up, the idea that simply seeing something more often can make us like it or trust it more, it sounds almost too simple, doesn't it? Like, just show it to me enough times and I'll start to like it. Is it really that straightforward?
It sounds deceptively simple, I agree, but it's a remarkably powerful psychological phenomenon. It's called the mere exposure effect. Our brains are just naturally inclined to feel more at ease, more comfortable, and even more positive toward things that feel familiar. Think about it maybe from an evolutionary perspective. What's familiar is generally perceived as safe, right? Not a threat. This unconscious comfort, it translates directly into preference. This is exactly why consistent brand visuals across all relevant channels, from a billboard to a website banner to social media, or those retargeting ads that seem to follow you around the internet, why they're so incredibly effective.
Ah, the retargeting ads. Yeah, those definitely work on familiarity.
They do. They increase visibility, yes. But maybe more importantly, they build trust and familiarity over time. The more a brand logo appears on your feed or your commute, the more trustworthy and acceptable it starts to feel, often even before you've consciously tried the product or, evaluated its merits. This familiarity breeds preference, often preceding any logical, conscious thought about the product itself. There's even research suggesting that customers exposed to a brand's ad at least 10 times will, purely based on that repetition, develop a preference for that brand over others. It just shows how deeply repetition impacts our unconscious brand perception and ultimately loyalty.
That's fascinating. And yeah, almost unsettling how easily our preferences can be shaped just by seeing something again and again. Okay, now let's talk about a feeling most of us know really well, the sting of losing something. Why is it that we often feel the pain of losing something far more acutely, more intensely, than the pleasure of gaining something of equal worth? It seems kind of counterintuitive, right? Like losing $100 versus gaining $100. Why does the loss hurt so much more?
That's the core of loss aversion. Psychological studies have consistently shown that the pain of losing something is roughly twice as powerful, emotionally speaking, as the pleasure of gaining something of equal value.
Yeah.
It's a fundamental asymmetry in how we process gains and losses.
Twice as powerful. Wow.
Yeah, it's significant. And this powerful bias explains exactly why phrases like "don't miss out," or "limited time offer," or while supplies last, are so incredibly persuasive. We are, psychologically speaking, just more driven to prevent a loss, whether that's a missed opportunity, a discount, or a limited edition item, than we are to simply pursue a gain. So marketers cleverly highlight what customers stand to lose if they don't act now. This is why you see those countdown timers ticking away on e-commerce sites all the
Oh
time.
yeah, the timers definitely add pressure.
Right. Or those shrinking inventory counters that signal urgency, like only 3 left in stock, or last day for 50% off. The fear of missing out on a deal or losing the chance to acquire something desirable is often a stronger, more immediate motivator than the simple desire to gain something new. It taps right into our primal fear of scarcity and deprivation.
Okay, next one. Our brains just can't seem to let go of something we've started but haven't quite finished, right? It's like an open tab in our mind that we just feel this urge to close. How do marketers use that? Or maybe leverage that is a better word.
You're describing the Zeigarnik effect perfectly. It refers exactly to that natural inclination we have to remember unfinished tasks better than completed ones. This means that if you start an action like filling out a sign-up form or reading a multi-part article or even starting a level in a game and you don't finish, your brain is more likely to keep thinking about it. It generates this subconscious pull towards completion.
Ah, okay. That makes sense.
Marketers leverage this brilliantly. Think about the progress bars you see on online sign-up forms. You're 75% done.
Right, yeah. Keeps you going.
Exactly. They reduce friction, and they remind you of the partial effort you've already vested. Similarly, those email reminders for abandoned shopping carts, prime example, gently nudging you back to complete that purchase you started. Or even in content marketing, where maybe a campaign might tease part 2 coming soon, or conclude an article with "to be continued." These tactics keep you thinking about the unfinished business, creating a psychological imperative to complete it. It taps into that innate human need for cognitive closure.
Okay, these next three often seem to go hand in hand, playing on our deep-seated desire not to be left out and our natural tendency to, well, follow the crowd. I'm talking about scarcity, FOMO, and the bandwagon effect. They feel almost inseparable in a lot of modern marketing.
They absolutely are. They work together really effectively. The scarcity principle and FOMO, which is fear of missing out, of course, are like powerful twins. They play on our innate impulse to act swiftly when something is perceived as limited or exclusive. When you see phrases like limited edition, only X left in stock, flash sale ends tonight, or members only access, it immediately drives urgency and desirability.
Yeah, you feel like you have to act now.
Precisely. And this isn't just about availability, it's also about perceived value. If something is scarce, we often unconsciously assume it must be valuable or popular. No one likes missing out on something good, right? So this psychological trigger encourages immediate, often quite impulsive, action. Then the bandwagon effect builds powerfully on this by tapping into social proof, the immense allure of popularity. As profoundly social beings, we're deeply influenced by the choices of others around us. When everyone else seems to be choosing a particular product or brand, it creates this powerful psychological pull, that feeling of, well, if everyone else is doing it, it must be good or right.
Right, safety in numbers, almost.
Exactly. This is why you see websites displaying trending badges or showing X people are viewing this product right now, or highlighting positive user reviews and testimonials everywhere. Influencer endorsements, where popular figures showcase products, are also prime examples of leveraging the bandwagon effect. In online shopping environments, especially where we can see ratings and reviews from literally thousands of other people, the bandwagon effect is particularly potent. It gives us a strong sense of collective endorsement, and it reduces the perceived risk of making a bad choice. We're just wired to conform, and observing others' choices is a powerful shortcut for our own decision-making.
It's really amazing how brands can subtly guide our choices without us even realizing we're being nudged sometimes. It feels a bit like a magic trick when you finally see how it works. How do they pull that off so effectively?
Yeah, it can certainly feel like an invisible hand at work sometimes. The default effect is a key one here.
Yeah.
We tend to just stick with the pre-selected or the easiest option simply because changing it requires cognitive effort. Our brains are, inherently lazy in some ways. They prefer the path of least resistance.
Guilty as charged.
We all are. So brands use this by setting auto-renewal for subscriptions, for example, or pre-selecting upgrades during online purchases, or providing opt-out rather than opt-in choices for things like loyalty programs. For instance, when you sign up for a service, a premium tier might be pre-selected, right? Requiring you to actively uncheck it if you want the basic free version. This significantly increases the likelihood you'll just stick with the more expensive option, simply because it's the default. Now, of course, this should always be done ethically and transparently to maintain consumer trust and avoid accusations of, dark patterns or being deceptive.
Right, transparency is key there.
Absolutely. Then there's the decoy effect, which is incredibly clever, especially in pricing strategies. This happens when a less appealing third option is introduced, specifically designed to make one of the primary offerings seem considerably more attractive by comparison.
Okay, give me an example.
Sure. Think of a pricing page for software or a subscription. You might have a basic plan for, say, $10 a month, a premium plan for $30 a month, and then a decoy plan right in the middle for $25 a month that offers only slightly more than the basic, but clearly much less than the premium. That $25 decoy makes the $30 premium plan suddenly look like the obvious, smart choice, much better value for just a little more money compared to the clearly inferior decoy. Precisely. The framing effect highlights exactly that. The way you communicate something can be just as crucial, if not more so, than the content itself. Our interpretation of information is heavily influenced by the context in the presentation. For instance, stating that ground beef is 95% fat-free instead of 5% fat dramatically changes perception and decision-making, even though the factual content is identical. One frame emphasizes health, the other emphasizes fat content.
Yeah, I always go for the fat-free label.
Right. Marketers constantly test different message frames. They emphasize benefits rather than drawbacks. They might even adjust visual framing with urgency colors, like using red for urgent calls to action, or green for a sense of safety and security, like on financial sites. Another example, a health campaign might frame getting a vaccine as preventing illness, that's a gain frame, versus framing it as avoiding the risk of getting sick, that's a loss frame. Each might influence behavior differently depending on the target audience and their mindset. And building on that idea is the pseudo-certainty effect. This plays on our inclination to view uncertain outcomes as if they are guaranteed, especially when we're looking at multi-step decisions. Marketers can exploit this by using things like risk-free trials or money-back guarantees. Now, while a trial period still involves a future commitment or the possibility of forgetting to cancel, the risk-free framing leads us to focus on that enticing sense of certainty. It makes taking the initial step feel much safer.
Right, removes that initial barrier.
Exactly. They use clear, simple language to frame different stages of a process like an onboarding flow or a long-term subscription as certain or risk-free. This builds consumer confidence and encourages completion, even if some underlying uncertainty actually remains.
Okay, I can definitely relate to this next one. Why do we often have a deeper connection to something we've had a hand in building or creating, even if it's just, assembling a piece of furniture or something that might have been a bit frustrating initially? Is there a psychological reason we feel this sense of ownership, almost an enhanced value, just from putting in the effort?
There absolutely is, and it's aptly named the IKEA effect. We tend to disproportionately value and appreciate things more when we've invested our own effort in creating, assembling, or customizing them.
The IKEA effect. Love it.
Yeah. This effort deepens our psychological connection to the product and significantly increases our enthusiasm and our sense of ownership. It's partly due to something called effort justification. We subconsciously rationalize that because we put effort into it, it must be valuable.
Makes sense. You justify the struggle.
Exactly. And brands leverage this beautifully. They offer customization options for products, think personalized sneakers, or build your own meal kits, or even custom-designed website templates. They might also invite customers to vote on new features or designs for a product, creating this sense of co-creation, and then they celebrate user stories or showcase customer-created content. This makes consumers feel truly part of the brand's journey, making them more loyal and engaged because they feel a personal investment, a sense of pride in their contribution.
That makes perfect sense. My bookshelf, which I definitely struggled to assemble, certainly has a special place in my heart. Okay, now, there's another very powerful, almost innate human tendency, wanting to return a favor. If someone does something nice for us, we feel kind of prompted, almost obligated to return the gesture. How does that translate into effective marketing?
It's the incredibly powerful principle of reciprocity, which is a fundamental social norm across cultures. When someone does something kind, generous, or valuable for us, we naturally feel a psychological obligation, a prompt, to return the gesture in some way. Marketers apply this by providing genuine value up front, often before asking for anything in return. Think about complimentary samples you get in a store.
Yeah, free samples are great.
Exactly. Or free downloadable resources online, like ebooks, webinars, helpful guides, or even welcome gifts for new subscribers. This initial act of giving cultivates goodwill and a sense of obligation towards their brand. It significantly increases the likelihood of future engagement and loyalty. The idea is to build a relationship based on generosity and perceived value first. Then the subsequent request for a purchase or a commitment feels like a more natural, reciprocal action rather than just a cold sales pitch. It's about establishing trust and a positive emotional foundation from the outset.
Okay, so beyond these specific cognitive biases, which often operate kind of under the radar subconsciously, marketers also employ broader, maybe more overt persuasive strategies to influence our decisions. It really is an art form, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah. At its core, the heart of advertising lies in its ability to sway buyers. It's really not enough to simply design good ad copy or have visually appealing graphics. It has to persuade prospective buyers to make the right choice, which, means the choice the marketer wants them to make. It's about more than just presenting information. It's about fundamentally influencing belief and action, sometimes on a massive scale.
I love this quote that's often attributed to Nielsen, the research company. Good ads don't merely sell a product, neither do they merely sell you. They tell a story. What makes storytelling so incredibly effective in advertising, especially when we think about just how many ads we see every single day?
Storytelling makes advertisements immensely effective because it reaches consumers on a much deeper, more emotional, and frankly more primal level than just a list of features or benefits ever could. Humans are just hardwired for stories. It's how we make sense of the world, how we remember information, how we connect with other people. A compelling narrative evokes feelings, it creates connections, and it makes a brand feel more human, more relatable, more authentic.
Mm-hmm. It bypasses the rational brain a bit.
Exactly. A dry list of product specifications might inform you, sure.
Uh-huh.
But a compelling narrative can make you feel something: joy, aspiration, empathy, relief, nostalgia. And studies consistently prove this out. Ads using good storytelling are recalled something like 22% more compared to just normal promotional material because they're far more memorable and engaging.
That was a significant jump.
It really is. Yeah. Think about brands like Dove, for instance. They tell stories of real beauty and self-acceptance, moving far beyond just talking about soap to connect with personal identity and values. Airbnb weaves narratives about adventures and belonging. They're selling transformative experiences, not just a place to stay. And then you have the giants like Disney and Coca-Cola, who are absolute masters of nostalgia and creating a sense of shared community. They elicit these strong emotional responses, making their brands feel timeless, deeply cherished, almost like a part of our own personal history. Stories create a shared reality, and brands that master this become part of our own narrative.
Right. Okay, so beyond the more subtle influences of bias and storytelling, there are also these more direct psychological techniques. They almost sound like direct pleas for compliance, used to nudge us toward making a decision. These seem like they're straight out of a, Psych 101 textbook.
They pretty much are, yeah. Yeah. And they're quite ingenious in their application in marketing. One common one is the foot in the door technique. This is where marketers start with a really small, easily agreeable request. Something minor, like asking for your email address to sign up for a free newsletter, or clicking a like button, or maybe taking a quick anonymous survey.
Low commitment.
Very low commitment.
Yeah.
But once you've agreed to that initial request, you're psychologically more likely to comply with a larger follow-up request later on, like actually purchasing a subscription or a full product. It leverages our innate principle of consistency. We want our actions to align with our past behavior, even if that past behavior was tiny. It creates this kind of psychological momentum.
Interesting. Okay.
What else?
Then there's the opposite, which is called the door-in-the-face technique. Here, an initially unreasonable, often kind of outlandish request is presented first, fully expecting it to be refused. For example, a charity could initially ask for, say, a $1,000 donation.
Which most people would say no to. Right, exactly. After the refusal, a much smaller, more reasonable request is offered, like maybe a $50 or $100 donation. The contrast makes the second, smaller ask seem much more palatable, almost like a compromise or a concession. This plays on a sense of reciprocity. You've given them a refusal on the first big request, so now you might feel a bit obligated to meet them halfway on the second, more reasonable one. It's a very effective negotiation tactic, actually.
Huh. Clever.
Then there's the lowball technique. This involves initially presenting a really attractive offer to secure a commitment from the consumer first. Then, once that commitment is made, once you've agreed in principle, maybe signed something, the terms are changed to be less favorable, perhaps by adding hidden fees or removing previously advertised benefits.
That sounds frustrating. Like the car dealer example.
That's the classic example, yeah. A car dealer advertising a very low price to get you into the dealership, only to reveal additional mandatory fees or expensive add-ons once you've mentally committed to buying the car and you're emotionally invested. Because you've already made the decision to buy, you're more likely to just accept the less favorable terms rather than go through the hassle of walking away and starting over.
Right, you're already invested.
Exactly. And finally, that's not all technique. This is a staple in infomercials, and it's very effective at creating perceived value just before the final pitch. The marketer presents an original offer, and then before you can even decide or object, an additional product, a bonus, or some extra benefit is suddenly added to sweeten the deal.
But wait, there's more.
That's exactly it. If you order now, we'll also include a second set of steak knives, absolutely free. This makes the overall package seem like an incredible, maybe time-sensitive value, encouraging a quick decision before you have time to really evaluate the original offer on its own merits. It creates the sense that you're getting a significant bonus, making the initial offer seem almost irresistible.
Okay, these are definitely techniques you see all the time once you start looking for them. Now, pricing. It isn't just a number, is it? It feels like a really profound psychological lever, constantly shifting our perception of value, often in ways we don't even realize. It's like a whole field in itself.
Precisely, yeah. It's all about perception, and marketers are absolute masters of shaping that perception through pricing. Anchoring is a key tactic here. This is where the very first price you see serves as an anchor or a reference point, and it influences how all subsequent prices are judged in relation to it.
Okay, how does that work in practice?
Well, retailers often show an original higher price right next to a discounted lower one to highlight the savings, right? That original price acts as the anchor. Or imagine walking into a store and the first thing you see is a luxury watch priced at, say, $10,000. Then further down the counter, you see another nice watch for $1,000. Suddenly, that $1,000 watch seems incredibly affordable, even if it's objectively still quite expensive. The initial $10,000 price anchored your perception of what's reasonable.
Ah, okay. Sets the scale.
Exactly. It's why the manufacturer's suggested retail price, or MSRP, is often prominently displayed, even if very few people ever actually die at that price. It just sets a high anchor. Price framing is another crucial strategy. This is where the way a price is presented significantly affects its perception and your willingness to pay. Breaking down a large yearly cost into a smaller, more digestible daily or monthly rate, like saying 99 cents per day instead of $361.35 per year for a streaming service, makes it seem far more manageable and less intimidating.
Yeah, the cup of coffee a day comparison.
Right. Consumers are often more willing to commit to smaller, more frequent costs, even if the total amount ends up being the same or even higher over time. And then there's charm pricing, where prices end in $0.99, like $9.99 instead of $10. Research consistently shows that customers perceive prices with a $99 suffix as significantly cheaper than the rounded up number, even though the difference is literally just a single cent.
Why is that? Just the first digit?
Largely, yeah. Our brains tend to process the leftmost digit first, so $9.99 feels like 9 something rather than 10. This tiny psychological tweak can apparently increase purchase likelihood by as much as 24% in some studies. It's surprisingly effective. Bundle pricing is another common one, offering multiple products or services together as a package at a reduced rate. Think fast food combo meals, software suites, or streaming services bundling multiple channels. It makes customers feel like they're paying less overall, and it encourages them to buy more items than they might have individually. It simplifies the decision-making process and often creates this perception of enhanced value, even if you don't necessarily need every single item in the bundle.
Right, getting more for your money.
Exactly. And of course, the decoy effect, which we touched on earlier, is often brilliantly deployed as a pricing strategy. It makes one option look like a much better value by strategically introducing that third, less attractive alternative, subtly guiding consumers towards the desired middle or higher tier product without them feeling explicitly pressured. It's all about manipulating the cognitive landscape of choice architecture.
This next area is so fascinating to me. Why do we often feel such a strong, almost personal connection to some brands? Like they're really an extension of who we are or maybe who we aspire to be. It feels like it's more than just liking a product, right? It feels much deeper than that.
It absolutely is deeper. The saying, "I am what I buy," actually rings incredibly true here. Because consumers really do construct and express their identities and present themselves to others through the brands they choose to associate with. Think back to Apple's famous Get a Mac campaign from the mid-2000s. Remember those ads? They featured a young, hip, sort of tech-savvy Mac guy contrasted with a more nerdy, older, slightly bumbling PC guy.
Oh, yeah, I remember those clearly.
Yeah, right. That campaign wasn't just selling computers. It successfully associated the Apple brand with a very desirable identity. Cool, creative, modern, forward-thinking. This resonated deeply with consumers who either already identified with those traits or, perhaps more powerfully, wished to emulate them. Buying Apple products became a statement about who they were or who they wanted to be seen as. This connection goes way beyond mere utility or function. If your brand doesn't resonate with your customer's real or desired identity, it's pretty unlikely to inspire true brand love and lasting loyalty. The best-loved brands, they communicate personality traits that consumers either identify with or wish to emulate, whether that's being environmentally conscious like Patagonia, maybe adventurous like the North Face, sophisticated like Rolex, or family-oriented like Disney. Brands become symbols, allowing us to project our values, our aspirations, our self-image onto the products we consume. It's really about finding that profound psychological connection between the brand's carefully crafted persona and the consumer's own self-concept. That creates a bond that's much, much stronger than just a simple transactional relationship.
That makes incredible sense. And it's amazing how our social circles, our communities, can dictate our choices in such powerful, often quite invisible ways. If we connect this to the bigger picture, there was a fascinating study on solar panel installations that really highlights this power of social identity, right?
It does, yeah, it's truly remarkable. Social identity, which is a core component of our personal identity, involves defining ourselves based on our membership in certain social groups. That could be your neighborhood, your professional community, your hobby group, even your online fandom, right? These groups profoundly influence our choices and preferences, often unconsciously because we're driven by this fundamental desire to fit in, to gain approval, or just express solidarity with our tribe. In that specific study on solar panel installations you mentioned, researchers found something striking. The most predictive factor for whether someone would install solar panels wasn't their wealth or even their stated environmental consciousness. It was simply whether their neighbors had already installed them.
Wow, just seeing it nearby.
Yeah. A single installation actually increased the likelihood of further installations within a mile radius by almost half. It speaks volumes about the powerful ripple effect of social proof and visible group norms. If they have it, maybe I should too. And this powerful influence of social groups is exactly why so many advertising campaigns subtly, or sometimes overtly, suggest that other members of your social group use a particular product.
Yeah.
Think about ads showing, say, health-conscious mothers endorsing a specific organic food brand, or tech enthusiasts all using a certain gadget, or even beauty brands showcasing diverse groups of friends enjoying their products together.
Taps into that belonging need.
Precisely. Some brands even go so far as to create exclusive social networks or online communities just for their customers, essentially forming a social group around their products. This taps directly into our fundamental human need for belonging, for social validation, and that desire to conform to perceived group standards. It makes us far more likely to adopt brands favored by our perceived tribe. It's a fundamental aspect of human behavior that marketers understand very, very deeply.
Okay, shifting gears slightly, but still related to perception. Even something as seemingly simple as color plays a huge, often subconscious role in brand perception. It's not just an aesthetic choice, is it? It feels like there's a whole science behind choosing brand colors.
Oh, absolutely. Not just aesthetic. It's a profound psychological lever. Color has an almost immediate and significant impact on our emotions and our responses towards brands, often before any words are even processed or read. Different colors evoke different feelings and associations, and marketers leverage this very deliberately to create specific impressions and moods. For instance, the color red. It often induces a sense of urgency, excitement, energy, or sometimes even panic or readiness. This is why fast food chains like McDonald's, KFC, and even Coca-Cola heavily utilize red in their branding and logos. It's designed to stimulate quick decision-making, maybe increase appetite, and definitely grab attention. Think of a sale sign. It's almost always red, right?
Yeah, red definitely screams, look at me, or hurry.
Exactly. In stark contrast, the color blue tends to instigate feelings of confidence, reliability, security, and tranquility. That's why you see so many financial services like PayPal, Visa, American Express, or big tech companies like Facebook and IBM frequently utilizing blue in their logos and advertising. It visually communicates stability, trustworthiness, and professionalism.
Right, calming and trustworthy.
Precisely. Green, on the other hand, is very often associated with nature, health, growth, and tranquility, making it incredibly popular for organic food brands, eco-friendly products, or environmental initiatives. Yellow tends to evoke optimism, cheerfulness, and warmth, while purple often suggests luxury, royalty, creativity, or wisdom. Marketers very carefully choose these colors across all aspects of their branding, packaging, website design, advertising to affect consumer opinion on a subconscious level. They reinforce the brand message and evoke specific feelings without a single word needing to be spoken. The right combination of colors can really make a brand feel more pleasant, more reliable, and just reinforce its core message, all happening beneath our conscious awareness.
Okay, as we've seen throughout this discussion, these psychological tools are incredibly powerful. They can influence us in really profound ways, sometimes, frankly, without us even realizing it. But this immense power obviously comes with a significant responsibility. What happens when that power is misused? When persuasion crosses that often blurry line into manipulation? What are the implications, both for us as consumers and maybe for society as a whole?
Yeah, this raises an incredibly important question, and it's one that the advertising industry itself grapples with constantly,
Yeah.
or at least it should be. Misleading advertising is a really serious challenge. It undermines consumer trust, and it damages the integrity of the entire advertising industry. It's considered inherently unethical precisely because it actively deceives consumers. It can lead them to make uninformed, ill-advised, or sometimes even harmful decisions based on false premises. It fundamentally erodes the foundational trust that allows a market to function fairly and transparently.
Right, if you can't trust the ads, the whole system gets shaky.
Exactly. When consumers can't trust what they see or hear from advertisers, the entire system starts to break down. And that can have pretty significant societal consequences beyond just individual bad purchases.
So it's not just about outright lies then, is it? It feels like it can be much more subtle than that. I imagine it's often a slippery slope.
It absolutely is a slippery slope, and it extends far beyond simple, provable falsehoods. Misleading advertising can take many different forms. Of course, it includes outright lies or fabricating claims about a product or service, but it also encompasses things like omitting crucial information that, if known, would likely change a consumer's decision, or even subtly presenting factually true information in a way that the average consumer is likely to misinterpret it. This could involve using exaggerated imagery, making comparative claims without a clear, fair, verifiable basis, or, famously, hiding important terms and conditions in minuscule print that almost no one can reasonably read or understand.
Ah, the dreaded fine print.
Right. The intent behind all these forms, though, is generally the same: to influence behavior deceptively, to create a false impression that benefits the advertiser, often at the consumer's expense.
Let's maybe look at some prominent real-world cases that have kind of shaped our understanding of misleading advertising and its significant consequences, both for the companies involved and, for consumer trust in general.
Sure. One of the most infamous examples in recent memory has to be Volkswagen. They faced absolutely massive legal challenges over their clean diesel advertising campaign. For years, from about 2009 to 2015, they falsely advertised certain diesel vehicles as being environmentally friendly and compliant with strict emissions standards,
Yeah.
often promoting them as a green alternative fuel choice.
Yeah, I remember that being a big selling point.
It was huge. However, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, and later the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC, revealed that Volkswagen's claims were based on a defeat device. This was sophisticated software installed in the cars that could actually detect when they were undergoing official emissions testing. Only during the test would the software activate the full emissions controls to appear compliant. But in normal, real-world driving conditions, these controls were reduced, and the vehicles emitted nitrogen oxides at levels up to 40 times the legal limit in the U.S.
40 times. Wow, that's blatant.
Incredibly blatant, yeah. This led to a massive false advertising case, a record-breaking settlement requiring Volkswagen to return as much as $10 billion to affected car owners through buybacks and compensation. The total fines globally exceeded $20 billion, and the reputational damage was just immense, long-lasting, and global, a stark reminder of the huge cost of deception. Then there's Red Bull, the energy drink known for its famous slogan, "Red Bull gives you wings." They actually faced a class action lawsuit back in 2013, alleging that they falsely advertised specific functional benefits, things like improved physical performance, better concentration, faster reaction time. The plaintiffs argued these claims lack sufficient scientific backing.
Gives you wings always seem pretty metaphorical to me.
Right, and Red Bull strongly denied any wrongdoing, stating the slogan was always meant to be humorous, metaphorical, representing the product's energizing effect. However, they ultimately agreed in 2014 to a $13 million settlement. This required them to pay out a portion to consumers who felt misled by the more specific performance claims, not just the slogan. It highlighted the need for more transparent substantiation of product claims, even for seemingly figurative or puffery-based slogans, especially when specific benefits are implied. Kellogg's Frosted Mini Wheats also ran into trouble with federal regulators, specifically the FTC. Back in 2009, federal charges were brought against Kellogg for falsely advertising that its cereal could improve children's attentiveness by nearly 20%.
It's a very specific claim for a cereal.
It is. And the study they referenced to back this up only showed that about 11% of children achieved this level of improvement. And even then, only under specific conditions compared to skipping breakfast entirely. The FTC determined these claims were unsubstantiated and misleading. This led to a settlement where Kellogg had to pay $4 million to consumers, and crucially, they were prohibited from making similar unsubstantiated health or cognitive function claims in the future without rigorous, competent scientific evidence. It really underscored the critical need for brands to back up health and wellness claims with credible, accurate data, particularly when they're targeting vulnerable populations like children. A deeply concerning case involves Johnson & Johnson baby powder. This company has faced significant controversy and literally thousands of lawsuits, particularly heating up since the mid-2010s. They were accused of specifically targeting certain demographics, especially African American and overweight women, for their talc-based product, despite emerging safety concerns potentially linking talc usage to ovarian cancer. Investigations and, critically, internal company documents brought to light during litigation revealed undisclosed asbestos contamination in the talc product over decades. This raised severe ethical questions about whether the company knowingly exposed consumers to risk while actively promoting the product as safe and gentle.
That's incredibly serious. Asbestos is no joke.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This resulted in thousands of lawsuits alleging the product caused ovarian cancer, with some massive jury payouts in the billions, though many are still under appeal or being settled. It eventually prompted Johnson & Johnson to discontinue sales of the talc-based baby powder product in North America in 2020, and then globally by 2023, shifting to cornstarch-based versions. It's a stark example of a company facing severe ethical and financial repercussions for alleged deceptive practices and prioritizing profit over potential consumer safety risks. And finally, let's touch on L'Oreal skincare claims. L'Oreal USA, a global beauty giant, was scrutinized by the FTC for claims made about two of its high-end skincare products, Genifique and Youth Code. They advertised quite heavily that these products were clinically proven to boost genes and provide visibly younger skin in just 7 days. Very bold claims.
Boost genes sounds pretty sci-fi for skincare.
Right. The FTC found these claims false and unsubstantiated, determining that L'Oreal lacked adequate scientific evidence to support such strong biological assertions about gene activity. As a result, L'Oreal USA was barred from making future anti-aging claims related to gene modification or similar concepts without solid, competent, and reliable scientific evidence. These cases, taken together, really underscore that even huge global leaders with vast resources can face severe legal and financial consequences, along with immense reputational damage for deceptive marketing practices. It sends a clear message that claims must be substantiated and truthful, especially when dealing with health, safety, or significant product benefits.
Yeah, those examples are really sobering. It shows the real-world impact. Now, beyond outright deception, there's another particularly concerning aspect we should touch on. How can marketing tactics, even if they're not explicitly misleading, actually contribute to or even fuel addictive behaviors, sometimes with really serious consequences for public health and individual well-being?
Right. Well, marketing is, an essential component of the modern economy. It drives innovation, informs consumers, supports media. Its influence on addictive behaviors really represents a darker side of its power. It can actively exploit existing psychological vulnerabilities, it can reinforce unhealthy habits, and sometimes it can unwittingly create environments where dependency thrives. This isn't always about malicious intent necessarily, but it's a profound ethical challenge that needs constant scrutiny and awareness.
So how does this play out? Give me some examples.
Well, think about the marketing for fast food and sugary drinks. The ads often feature bright colors, catchy jingles, images of happy, often unrealistically healthy-looking people enjoying the product, right?
Mm-hmm.
They tap directly into our emotional desire for comfort, pleasure, maybe social acceptance. They normalize frequent consumption that, over time, can lead to addiction-like behaviors simply due to the highly palatable nature of sugar, fat, and salt combinations.
Mm-hmm. Makes it seem normal, even desirable.
Exactly. This contributes significantly to public health issues like obesity, type 2 diabetes, and related diseases. The messaging makes consumption seem not only normal but highly desirable, often overlooking or downplaying the long-term health implications. It effectively creates cravings and reinforces cycles of overconsumption. Historically, of course, the alcohol and tobacco industries have relied incredibly heavily on advertising to normalize and even glamorize their products, despite well-documented severe health risks. Alcohol ads often depict drinking as this sophisticated, enjoyable activity associated with social success, relaxation, fun, rarely if ever, showing the negative consequences like addiction, accidents, or health problems. Similarly, past tobacco advertising, much of which is banned now, thankfully portrayed smoking as glamorous, rebellious, a symbol of freedom or coolness. This unfortunately led to widespread addiction and immense public health crises that we're still dealing with.
Yeah, the legacy of that marketing is still felt.
Absolutely. Even with much stricter regulations today, which have curtailed some of the most egregious practices, the legacy of these marketing strategies persists. It particularly impacts impressionable young people by normalizing substance use, leading to earlier exposure and an increased risk of developing addictive behaviors later on. It's a continuous battle to balance commercial speech freedoms with public health imperatives. And in the digital age, this extends to newer areas, like online gaming. Microtransactions, and especially loot boxes, are often marketed using potent psychological triggers we've discussed, like FOMO, scarcity, and intermittent reinforcement encouraging compulsive spending. These elements, with their unpredictable rewards, are often compared to gambling due to their potentially addictive nature, leading to significant financial distress for some players, particularly vulnerable ones.
Right, the surprise mechanics controversy.
Exactly. Similarly, social media algorithms are specifically designed to maximize user engagement for as long as possible. They deliver highly personalized content streams that resonate deeply with users' preferences, creating this cycle of continuous engagement. This can easily lead to compulsive scrolling, constant checking of notifications, and anxiety when disconnected. The core business goal is often to maximize time on site or engagement metrics, and sometimes, unfortunately, that comes with the cost of promoting healthy user behavior, blurring the lines between engaging content and fostering digital dependencies or addiction. The ethical responsibility here really lies in recognizing these potential harms and designing platforms and marketing strategies for user well-being, not just for maximizing engagement numbers. It's a huge challenge.
So, okay, after exploring all these fascinating and sometimes, concerning facets of advertising psychology, what does this all really mean for us as consumers? And maybe on the flip side, how do marketers ethically apply these powerful insights today in a world that's becoming increasingly aware of these kinds of tactics?
Right. Well, for truly effective and, crucially, ethical marketing, companies really need to start by mapping the entire customer journey. This means understanding every single touch point, every decision point where these biases might naturally occur, from the initial awareness phase right through to post-purchase loyalty and advocacy. This allows them to strategically place their messaging where it will have the most genuine impact, hopefully in a helpful way. They also extensively A/B test their messaging, experimenting with different psychological triggers, different framings, and then carefully measuring the real impact on engagement and conversions. They're constantly refining their approach based on real user data.
So it's very data-driven and iterative.
It's extremely data-driven, yeah. Ethical marketers also understand that they can often combine biases for greater impact, recognizing their synergistic power. For example, pairing scarcity with social proof, like we talked about. An ad might say, almost gone, join 5,000 plus happy buyers who just got theirs. This multiplies the persuasive power, but the key is that it must be genuinely true and transparent. You can't just make up scarcity or social proof numbers. Crucially, ethical marketers understand that long-term brand loyalty and trust are built on integrity, not just on clever manipulation. They emphasize transparency with clear language, they provide strong guarantees, they ensure their claims are properly substantiated. They know that building a truly loyal customer base requires earned trust, not just a fleeting purchase driven by a psychological trick. It's really about designing for mutual benefit, not just exploiting vulnerabilities.
Right, that long-term trust seems critical. Now, it's impossible to ignore how the rise of artificial intelligence and big data has transformed this landscape, especially when it comes to online advertising. It really feels like the ads know us better than we know ourselves sometimes. How has that changed the game?
You're absolutely right. It's been a monumental shift, a complete revolution in targeting and personalization, really. Online advertising has become hyper-personalized. Sophisticated AI algorithms now track consumer behavior, interests, past purchases, even real-time browsing patterns in incredible granular detail across multiple platforms. This allows for hyper-targeted ads that are highly relevant to individual consumers, which dramatically increases engagement rates. Industry reports consistently suggest that personalized ads can achieve over 80% higher engagement rates compared to just generic, non-targeted ads.
80% higher. That's huge.
It's massive. Because they are so precisely tailored to your inferred preferences and browsing history, they often feel like they're predicting what you might want or need even before you consciously search for it. It really can feel like having a mind reader for your shopping habits.
But that level of personalization, while undeniably effective for marketers, inevitably raises some pretty important questions about consumer privacy, doesn't it? It feels like this constant tension between convenience and intrusion, or even surveillance.
Absolutely. It's a major ethical challenge, and one that regulators, companies, and consumers are constantly grappling with. It's a moving target. Consumer surveys consistently show that a significant percentage of consumers, often upwards of 77% depending on the study, are deeply concerned about how companies track, collect, and use their online behavior data.
Yeah, I definitely feel that concern sometimes.
Right. It highlights this ongoing tension. Companies face the critical challenge of balancing the tremendous benefits of data-driven marketing and personalization, which can be genuinely useful for consumers too, with the absolute imperative for ethical advertising practices and robust transparency about data use. They have to navigate complex privacy regulations like GDPR in Europe or CCPA in California. They need to be much clearer and more upfront about their data usage policies. And ultimately, they have to prioritize consumer trust to avoid backlash, maintain their brand reputation, and ensure they are not seen as creepy or exploitative. It's a very delicate balance to strike, and the ground is constantly shifting.
So for you, our listener, thinking about everything we've covered today, what is the single most valuable takeaway from this entire deep dive into the psychology of advertising? What's the one thing you should really carry forward from this conversation into your daily life as a consumer?
I think the most powerful insight you can gain is simply heightened awareness. Just understanding these psychological strategies, these mental shortcuts, these persuasive techniques, it helps you recognize when and how you're being influenced. It's not about becoming cynical or distrustful of everything. It's about becoming more discerning, more mindful. This awareness allows you to shop smarter, to make more informed, more intentional decisions, rather than being unconsciously swayed by sophisticated marketing techniques that are designed precisely to bypass your rational thought. It empowers you to think critically about the thousands of commercial messages you encounter every single day. It helps you reclaim agency over your choices, becoming an active decision maker rather than just a passive target. Ultimately, this knowledge is your greatest defense, your best tool in a world that is absolutely saturated with persuasion attempts.
Wow. We've journeyed pretty far today, haven't we? From those subtle, almost invisible nudges of cognitive biases that our brains just can't seem to resist, all the way to the deliberate, often very sophisticated art of persuasion employed by savvy marketers. We've explored how brands try to weave themselves into our very identities, shaping who we think we are or who we aspire to be, often through the products we choose to buy and display. And, importantly, we've confronted the darker side of this powerful force, the really worrying implications of misleading advertising, and advertising that can potentially fuel addictive behaviors by exploiting our deepest psychological vulnerabilities.
The world of advertising is indeed a very complex psychological battleground. It's a constant competition for your attention, for your loyalty, and ultimately for your wallet. Being informed, being aware, as we just said, is truly your greatest defense and your most powerful tool in navigating it. While ethical advertising should prioritize consumer interest and strive to build long-term trust, upholding these standards is clearly a continuous, evolving challenge for the industry itself, especially as technology advances.
So what does this all mean for you, specifically, listening right now? Next time you see an ad, whether it's one of those eerily relevant social media posts targeted directly at your interests, or a towering billboard on your commute, or even just the subtle arrangement of products on a store shelf, maybe take a moment, just pause. Consider not just what it's selling, but how it's trying to connect with your deepest psychological triggers. Are you simply the target, passively allowing your preferences and desires to be shaped by these external forces? Or are you truly in control of your choices, armed with the knowledge to make deliberate, conscious decisions that align with your actual needs and values? Go forth, armed with this knowledge, and observe the world of advertising with a fresh, discerning, and hopefully empowered eye.